Hello guys, in this video I'll be talking about my Nikon D5500. I'll be doing an in-depth review of this camera. I bought it in 2017 and it's been my A cam pretty much, as I don't have a B cam yet. I will be talking about the autofocus, the lens, the build quality, the sensor, so on and so forth. Now, this is not really going to be a really complex review because I don't really have that much space available anyway here in the house. But if you want a more detailed review, there's a lot of reviews online on YouTube and stuff. So if you need a more in-depth review, you can check those out. This is just going to be my review of what I think about this camera and some tests of the autofocus and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and stay till the end to get my review on this camera. Is it worth it still in 2020? Let's find out. This is the Nikon D5500. I got this camera back in 2017 as at the time it checked the most boxes for me for both photo and video. It's a pretty great all-round camera for entry-level photographers or those looking to upgrade from their smartphones. It has some drawbacks here and there, especially for video, but if you're only doing photo and you don't really take a lot of video or need that great of an autofocus during video recording, then I think this will be one of the best values that you can get. But it's no longer in production. You can now get the 5600, but you can get this one used. So the camera uses a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor from Sony. This sensor is pretty great for low light and dynamic range. You can easily recover details in post pretty nice, even if you're overexposed. The ISO performance is pretty nice as well, but I wouldn't go above 3200. I'm only doing this review based on the results I got with my kit lens, the 18-55 AFP lens, so please take that into consideration. I have not done really that much shoots with any other lenses. The body is very small, it's made of plastic, it has very few buttons, it doesn't have much controls, so you cannot find as many pro controls or function buttons as you can on higher level cameras. It does have some pretty nice things like the flip out screen, which is very useful for both video and photography, especially for macro. Like I said, the camera is very small, it's very compact, one of the smallest DSLRs on the market. The screen does flip out, but unfortunately the mic does block the screen, so if you're using an external microphone on top of the camera, you will not be able to rotate the screen, so that really sucks. But at least it's useful for framing yourself and also checking exposure and monitoring audio. Because this is a DSLR, the viewfinder you get is an optical viewfinder. It's a pentaprism type, it's not a pentaprism like on higher end cameras, so this means that the brightness is not going to be as great as on higher end models. So if you're doing a lot of low light photography, for example, you're not gonna have that much brightness in the viewfinder, so it's gonna be harder to compose the photos and take photographs. Shooting with a viewfinder not only is more accurate because of the better autofocus, the information displayed is not that big, it's very small, and overall it's not that great of an experience, but I still enjoy the viewfinder much more than with the LCD screen. Although this is not the most ideal for me because I tend to prefer electronic viewfinders like on mirrorless cameras, because what you see in the viewfinder is what you're gonna get, while with the optical viewfinder that you can find on the SLRs, what you see is not what you get. So if you do not have the settings properly exposed, you might have overexposing or underexposing your shots like I do most of the time. This camera does 5 frames per second burst shooting, so it's not really ideal for sports or fast moving subjects. The autofocus is pretty reliable in single point AF. The camera does not use phase detect, so the autofocus in video is gonna be a little bit weaker. It's not really that great, and I will show you some autofocus tests as well. The camera for single point AF is pretty great though, but in low light it will struggle a little bit like most cameras do. The image quality is pretty nice as well. I have a lot of galleries that you can check out on my pages if you want to see some examples of the shots I've taken with this camera and lens combination. But overall it's a pretty nice camera for those looking to upgrade from their smartphone or looking to have more resolution. You can find it now pretty cheap. I don't think they produce this model anymore, but you can get the next model, which is the 5600 as well. You can get it pretty cheap. I got mine for 600 euros. The screen is a full touch screen, so it has full touch screen implementation. You can touch the screen to focus, access the menus, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, most of the settings have to be adjusted via the menus, like the image stabilization system. One of the main reasons I still continue to use the kit lens is because of its minimum close focusing distance, which is in this case is 25 centimeters. It allows you to get pretty close to subjects, especially figurines. I especially love to use it for macro photography and close-up. It has a good magnification ratio, so you can get a lot of semi-macro shots with it. It's also very versatile. It starts at 27mm equivalent, it zooms all the way to 82.5, so it's good for wide-angle shots and also for the portraits in terms of the zoom range. So if you're an adventurer like me, this lens can do pretty much most of the things that you need. It's not going to be super wide, but it's wide enough to capture group shots and stuff where you need to really feel the frame, and it's also long enough to allow for some reach. Unfortunately, it's variable aperture, of course, this is to be expected since it's a kit lens, but it does have its advantages like the minimum focus distance. It's also near silent during autofocusing. It's also very lightweight and small. It is just a little bit over 200 grams, and it pairs perfectly with this camera. It's made of plastic, so that's another reason why it's so small and compact. But the optical quality I don't think is really that great, but overall it's a pretty nice kit lens. I just wouldn't use it for any professional type of work, but if you want a lens that pretty much covers most of your needs and you don't really need that high of an optical quality, then I guess this will be a pretty good match, especially with this camera. Unfortunately, it's a collapsible design, which I'm not really a fan of. This means that you're gonna have to extend the lens each time you want to start shooting. So if you do not have the lens extended, you won't be able to take any photographs. And this is pretty bad in my opinion, because it gathers a lot of dust and bugs can enter the lens and into the sensor. So I really don't like that design, but I guess it helps it to keep it small. Now this camera has a big problem, which is the fact that you can't really change the aperture while in live view. This is a huge problem of Nikon, not being able to change the aperture while in live view. It's absolutely terrible, because what this means is that you're not going to be able to really see how you're going to get the photo. So if you can only change the aperture while in the viewfinder, but if you're shooting with the LCD screen, you cannot change the aperture, so you're going to have to either change the ISO or change the shutter speed. So I think that's really one of the biggest drawbacks of this camera, and I really hate that. This camera, like I said, has a full touchscreen implementation, so you can access the menus and all of the other settings with the touchscreen. I especially like that you can tap to focus, because this makes it much easier to focus with this camera because of the slower autofocus of the camera. If you're doing mostly just photo, this will be a pretty nice camera, but if you want to tackle to some video, I would really not recommend this camera because of the problems I have said. The kit lens is pretty nice, but I would not advise it to use it all the time. I would especially recommend the 35mm f1.8 DX lens, which is a prime lens, but it's going to be much better for the light. And if you're doing portraits, if you want to do portraits or you want to blur out the background, it's going to be much better than the kit lens. As for the battery, it's pretty great. The CIPA ratings have it rated at 820 shots, but I have easily been able to take over 1000 shots per event, so it's pretty great battery life. It also, for video, has over 2 hours of recording, so you can film almost 3 hours of video recording as well. So overall the battery life is pretty great. It's one of the best battery lives available at this price point. So if you're a hybrid shooter like me who does a lot of photos and video, this will be very nice to have because of the battery life. This camera also has a built-in flash, so if you're in low light you can use a flash if you want to. I've never actually used it. I don't use the built-in flash because I don't think it's really that great in quality. If you really want to do flash photography, I would advise you to buy an external flash, which is going to be much better than the built-in flash. Pretty much all built-in flashes suck in all cameras, so I never use the built-in flash. As for the video specs, this camera can record up to 1080p 60 frames per second. It does not have 4K. The camera is not really ideal for video. It's got a recording limit of 30 minutes, which decreases to 20 minutes or 10 minutes depending on the frame rate and the quality. You can set the quality of the video to high or normal. The bitrate is really low, so the video quality is not going to be that great. It's a little bit soft, especially with the lens like the kit lens, the 18-55. The audio preamps are not really that great as well. So I would advise to use an external microphone like the Rode Video Micro, but the audio preamps aren't really that great, so I would not really advise this camera for the real production work or event shooting, or if you're really just doing stuff where you don't really need the good autofocus. If you're doing single point AF or manual focus and you don't move a lot in the frame, then this will be a decent option, I guess. But like I said, I wouldn't really recommend it for video. Something to be aware of is that this camera does not have a built-in focus motor, so if you're using any of the older Nikon AFD type lenses, for example, you're not going to be able to autofocus with this camera. So if you really require autofocusing with this camera, I would advise you to only use AFS or the newer AFP lenses if you really need the autofocus. This camera does not have in-body image stabilization, so if you're using any type of lens which doesn't offer stabilization, you're gonna have very shaky video. So for those of you who do a lot of handheld video, I would recommend you to get a gimbal, because even though the kit lens offers 3 stops of image stabilization, as you can see from this test, there's not a lot of difference in the quality of stabilization. So even if you're using the kit lens or any other stabilized lens, I would still recommend you to get a gimbal if you want to have some shake-free video, because the stabilization in the lenses are not really that great, and because the body is very small, it's harder to stabilize the camera. Okay, let's try out the continuous autofocus right now. I have it set to continuous autofocus with face priority on, so let's see how it tracks. The consensus when it comes to video autofocus is that the lens does focus correctly sometimes, but most of the time it's gonna go back and forth and hunt a lot. Even when it gets me in frame and gets my face in focus, even if I don't move, the lens is gonna lose focus. This is because of the camera. Like I said, it does not implement a phase detect autofocus, so it's gonna be very bad for video. Panasonic cameras, for example, also have contrast detect AF, but they have a better version of contrast detect, so they're gonna be much better than Nikon's. The only current Nikon model which has phase detection in DSLR style is the D780. So this camera and all the others pretty much are gonna suck for video autofocus and subject tracking. So if you need that reliable autofocus like Canon or Sony, then you're not gonna find it here. It's gonna hunt a lot, as you can see. Even when it focuses in my face, it still loses it. And I don't really use continuous autofocus for this reason. I only use manual focus. Even if I don't move in the frame, if I set it to continuous, it's still gonna hunt and focus on the background and all other stuff, so I just leave it in manual. So just be sure to note that this camera is not really good for autofocus. Like I have said throughout the video, the autofocus is not really great for video, so be sure to use manual focus or single point AF. I try not to move much in the frame. This is an AFP lens, so the noise is going to be much quieter than AFS. It's near silent. You can still hear a little bit of it, but if you use an external microphone, it's not going to be able to pick it up. Now we're gonna go into the ISO test to see the performance of this camera in low light. First I have started with an overexposed image and then slowly degraded back into 100 ISO to properly expose the image. And then I've also done an underexposed shot to more easily notice the noise in the shadows. This camera has an ISO range of 100 to 25,600. Of course, you don't want to use that high of an ISO. I really don't advise you to use over 3200 with this camera. 3200 is really the max I would go with, but this is only true if you're using a faster lens like a 1.8 prime or a 2.8 zoom. If you're using a lens like the kit lens, which starts at 3.5, I would not go above 1600. I typically never shoot above 1000 ISO. I normally max out at either 800 or 1000 because of the kit lens, and also because this camera is notorious for having a lot of denoising at higher ISOs. So if you push the ISO too much, you're gonna start to notice that the images look very soft. This is because of the denoising that it does at higher ISO. So I would really not go above 1600 most of the times with this camera. It's a pretty great sensor, but then again, it's also dependent on the lens. So if you're not using a properly fast aperture lens, I wouldn't go above 1600, but overall I think it's a pretty good camera for low light, and it's definitely better than Canon rivals in APS-C. So if you need a good camera for low light photography, this will be pretty good. This is an audio test of the built-in microphone of the camera. I have an arm's length away distance from the camera. I'm currently with level 6 and the wind reduction off in the settings. This is the test of the built-in microphone. This microphone is a stereo microphone, which means it's going to pick up from all the sides, so it's mostly ideal for concerts and other audio sources which have sound coming from multiple sides, but I would not recommend it for YouTube videos or interviews or any other application in which you require mostly audio just from the front. If you're doing a lot of audio stuff which is stereo, then the microphone will be better. I think that an external shotgun microphone, depending on the quality, that is. But yeah, this is an audio test of the built-in microphone and the preamps of the camera. And now I'm going to be quiet for a little bit to see, or should I say to hear, how much background noise there is. And now we're going to switch to the Rode Video Micro shotgun microphone. And now I have attached the Rode Video Micro shotgun microphone on top of the camera. I think you can notice right away the difference in sound quality. It sounds much more full and rich. Shotgun microphones pick up mostly from the front and reject background surroundings, so this will be the most ideal for YouTubing and interviews and other applications which require audio coming from the front mostly. So this will be nice for YouTube. Like I said, you can notice the difference in the sound quality right away. I have the level set to 6. If I end up increasing more, I'm gonna peak, so that gets to show that it doesn't work the preamp as much as the built-in microphone. I use this for the event coverage, for concerts and other stuff. Even though it's not really ideal for concerts, it still is much more beneficial to use this mic, because since it doesn't push the preamps as much, your audio is not going to sound as distorted, or you're not going to reach the peaks as soon as you get with the built-in microphone. So this is what I use for event coverage and for all my YouTube videos. And now I'm going to be testing the background hiss noise, so let's be quiet for a little bit. And those were some audio tests of the built-in preamps of the camera. Now I'm going to be showing you some camera recommendations and some of the best values for both photo and video for under 1000 euros on the market right now. I have included cameras from Canon, Sony, Fujifilm and Panasonic, because all of these have a selfie screen, either flip up or flip out, so they're pretty much like the Nikon D5500, and they also have a lot of good photography and video features. Some are better than others, of course, so I'll be showing you some of the cameras I recommend. So first of all, we have the Canon. So we have the Canon 250D or the SL3. This is the best value for video. It's the cheapest of these three. It's the weakest for photography. It doesn't have that much photo features, but if you're only doing video and you want to pretty good autofocus, this is the best value. Very good for YouTube. Then we have the Canon 850D or the T8i. This is the best deal for hybrid shooters, people who do a lot of photos and videos at the same time. It is the most complete package of all three of them. It is the best for photography. It has much more features than the 250D, and it also has the famous dual pixel AF of Canon for good video autofocus. And then lastly we have the Canon M50, which is the only mirrorless camera out of the three. It is the best for vlogging and travel because it is the most compact. Also the kit lens starts at 24mm equivalent, so it's pretty decent for vlogging. So unlike the SL3 and the other one, you don't have to really buy a wide angle lens. You can vlog with the kit lens, which is why I targeted it best for vlogging and travel. Like I said, it's the most compact one. It of course is the least good when it comes to battery life, because it is the mirrorless, it has the worst battery life. But if that is not really a concern for you and you value more the compact size, then the Canon M50 is probably the best deal for you, because it also has better autofocus because of being mirrorless, so it's gonna have much more autofocus points. And then we have 3 more cameras, one from Sony, the other from Fujifilm, the other from Panasonic. So first we have the Sony a6400. This is the best value in my opinion for video. If you're only doing video and not really much photography or any photography at all, I think this is the best deal right now for those who want to do video only. It doesn't have image stabilization, but if you put this on a gimbal, which is what I would recommend anyway, you're gonna have a pretty nice setup for video. You also have the 6100, but the difference is not really that much. It's less than 200 euros difference, so I would advise you to get the 6400, which has not only a better viewfinder, more resolution in the viewfinder, but it also has picture profiles and other stuff which the 6100 lacks. The 6400 is very awesome because it has unlimited recording, so it doesn't have a record limit. So if you're doing podcasts or any stuff which require long recording times, this is going to be a pretty awesome camera for you. The autofocus is pretty good. It's on the level of Canon, even better in some ways. It's pretty top notch, the autofocus, but the ergonomics aren't really that great, and the lenses, the APS-C ones at least, are not really that good. But if you're doing mostly just video, you can buy this camera and a cheap gimbal, and then you can buy one of the Sigma 1614, for example, one of the Sigma Prime Trios 1.4 aperture, and you're gonna have a pretty top-notch killer setup for video. Then I have selected also the Fujifilm X-T200. In my opinion, this is the best photo camera out of these 3, because Fujifilm has the most complete and best APS-C lens system around. The Fujifilm also has a selfie screen as well, so you can frame yourself. The 6400, actually, the 6100, I forgot this, they will have a selfie screen, but it does only flip up, it doesn't flip out like the other cameras. So if that is a concern for you, you should note that it doesn't have a flip out screen, that's a flip up screen. But again, back to the Fujifilm, it is the best value for photography in my opinion. It's pretty good for photography. The color schemes are very nice because of the pretty nice color science of Fujifilm. Like I said, they have a lot of lenses. It's unfortunately a very expensive system to get into, but if that is not a concern to you and you want the best optical quality, then the Fujifilm is pretty nice. It's also very nice for vlogging as well because of the selfie screen. So there's that. And then we have the Panasonic G90. In my opinion, this is the best camera for hybrid shooters, people who do photos and videos at the same time. Like the Sony, it doesn't have a record limit, so that's pretty good. The screen is also very nice, better than the other 2. It's a flip out screen as well, fully articulating. It also is an OLED screen. The European model at least uses an OLED screen, so that's pretty great. It's the smallest sensor, unfortunately. It's a Micro Four Thirds sensor, but it's still going to be better than the Canon cameras I showed, because it still has more dynamic range and better light performance. The lens ecosystem of Micro Four Thirds can be a little bit expensive, the best lenses, but you can get the cheaper 1.7 prime lenses pretty cheap. So if you really need low light performance, then you can get those pretty cheap. It is the worst when it comes to light, of course, because of the smaller sensor, but it's pretty good all round. The battery life is pretty decent as well. It is the only one of these 3 with image stabilization in the body, so if you need that, if you don't want to use a gimbal, or you do a lot of handheld photo shooting or video, then this is going to be the only real viable option, because it is the only one with an IBIS system. There are more options available as well, like the Panasonic G9. It's only a little bit more expensive than 1,000 euros. It's still the best value in the market in my opinion right now, but as it is over 1,000 euros, I don't really go in depth with it here. But if budget is not really an option, you have that camera as well. It's pretty good for photo and video, and like I said, it's the best deal right now, at least in my opinion, for both photos and video. I also did some videos as well about that camera. I have a video on my channel if you want to check it out, where I talk about the camera and why I did not get it. Just note that it's a pretty nice package. If you can find it for less than 1,000 euros, I would say to get it. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. That was my Nikon D5500 review. This camera is getting a little bit too old now. It released in 2015, so there's a lot of better models right now. But for an entry-level beginner, people who want to print for their smartphone and don't want to really emphasize much on video,
I think this will be a perfect pair. You can get it pretty cheap now. Actually, right now it's been discontinued as of 2020, but you can find the 5600 model new, and also this one but used, because they no longer fabricate this model. So pretty much my consensus is that this camera is pretty good for photo if you don't really need that much controls in your camera, but it sucks for video because the autofocus is really not that great. It doesn't use face detection autofocus, it only uses contrast detect. So what that means that the autofocus in video is gonna suck, as well as tracking subjects like you saw in my tests. It really missed a lot of the shots, and even though it was saying that it was in focus, it really was not. So if you need a camera that does a pretty good autofocus in video, I would not recommend this camera. Also because it does not have unlimited recording, it has a record limit, so that's another downfall of this camera for video. But if you're only doing photo, this will be a very awesome camera to start with, and then along the way down the road, if you want to upgrade to a more bigger body, to more controls, better light performance, there's a lot of more options available for a beginner or entry-level photographer who's looking to upgrade his photography skills and photos. I think this will be a pretty nice pair. So that was it, guys. Thank you for watching this video review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like my content and want to support my work, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay up to date when I release new content. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Unholy Omega, signing out.